In the last few years, Disney's Star Wars seems to have become a mess. But why is that? One of the most commonly given answers, in some communities at least, is that it's become too feminist or too woke. Is that true though? In this video, I want to go on to say that this actually misidentifies the problem. The actual problem was that there was too little feminism or wokeness in the new Star Wars. I know a lot of people aren't really going to like that answer, but I think it's a better identification of the problem, and so will help solve it in the future. That said, I do agree there was an effort to make Star Wars more feminist or woke or diverse, but the problem wasn't those intentions. The problem was how it was actually done, that it was done badly. And that, in my opinion, was because of superficial feminism. While I'd agree then with some of the critics of new Star Wars, that there were problems with how wokeness affected the films, the problem wasn't an attempt at wokeness, the problem was that the attempt was superficial. Because of this, I think there's something for both sides of this argument to learn from each other. One side is right in practice and wrong on theory, and the other side is right in theory and wrong on practice. Okay then, so why am I saying that Disney's Star Wars is lacking in feminism and wokeness? Firstly, Rey. I want to start off by saying that I originally loved Rey as a character in The Force Awakens, and thought it was great to focus on a female Jedi. I'm not sure exactly why, but I tend to like and identify with female characters more often. I thought the way she was introduced was great, and very easy to empathise with, at first at least. So when I saw people calling Rey a Mary Sue after the film, I definitely disagreed. And it wasn't just people on the alt-right. I also saw someone who I thought was quite feminist making the same argument. To me, a Mary Sue was a higher bar, or perhaps a lower bar, depending how you look at it, that had to be cleared to make someone a Mary Sue. And Rey just didn't clear that, in my opinion. After The Last Jedi though, that changed. To me, she became more of a cardboard cutout character. It seemed quite clear to me that she was overpowered without explanation, and that she took the action she took simply because they were in the script, not because of any internal motivation. By the end of the film, I didn't feel like I really knew who Rey was as a person. She seemed like a nice person, obviously trying to do the right thing, but that's just quite bland and ununique. What are her personality quirks? What values or way of doing things makes her different? What are her personality flaws? On top of that, she barely had any training, and barely seemed to struggle. Did she suffer or sacrifice anything? In the end, it seemed to me like Rey was written as a superficially powerful character, but not a strong character, not a well-written, deep and complex character. She is just both nice and powerful. And I wouldn't say that's a particularly feminist direction to go in. For example, if a character in a movie was written as just attractive and nice, would that be a particularly feminist direction to go in? And is being powerful that much deeper than being attractive? That's why I'd argue that Rey is only superficially a feminist character, and therefore this is a problem for Star Wars, not because of too much feminism, but too little. Next, Finn's character. In these new set of films, Finn really got screwed over, and really that goes together with Captain Phasma as well. What actually happened to her character? Again, I thought the setup for Finn was great. An ex-stormtrooper joining the rebellion, or resistance, is a great idea. Maybe he'll try and inspire a revolution within the First Order, while Captain Phasma tries to stop him. That doesn't happen though. He could have gone on to take actions which were relevant to him being a stormtrooper, but instead he seemed to end up just being there for comedy, and to follow Rey about. So again, for all the talk of Star Wars becoming too woke, it doesn't seem like Star Wars actually treated its main black character particularly well. Perhaps the problem is that Lucasfilm didn't take Finn as seriously as it should have, not because it was too woke, but because it wasn't very woke at all. Finn also had a decent setup for confronting and overcoming Phasma. Before the films were released, she seemed to be advertised as an important character. It again could have been a great chance to see a female villain, something we haven't seen in a Star Wars film before. One direction they could have gone in is they could have had her obviously overwhelm him in the first film, have them be more or less equals in the second film, and then have him clearly overcome her in the final. But instead of that, after their conflict was set up, Finn ends up fighting some random stormtrooper, calling him a traitor that we've never seen before. It would have made far more sense if it was Phasma. By the end of the first film, Finn has already beaten and humiliated her, throwing her away like rubbish. Finally, Finn actually defeats her at the end of the second film, even though it isn't really quite obvious that she's dead, leaving Finn nothing left to achieve in the last film. On top of all of this, Captain Phasma barely got any screen time, and basically wasn't developed at all as a character. This again, I'd say, isn't particularly feminist. Phasma was advertised as important, a cool character and relevant to the plot, but then barely existed in the films themselves. She was used to give the films an appearance of girl power, but ultimately she was discarded and wasted as a character. Poe Dameron also wasn't treated particularly well. It seemed like he was meant to be part of the core trio over the trilogy, but it wasn't until the final film that he actually interacted with Rey on screen. If you want to give great representation to a Latino person, I wouldn't say this is it. The plot itself also seems to throw some weird things at the viewer. After Vice Admiral Holdo takes over the ship in The Last Jedi, it's implied that Poe is being unreasonable or even sexist to ask what the plan of escape is. He isn't even told there is a plan, so he takes over the ship to try and make sure everyone's safe, but then is blasted by Leia for doing so. What's the message here? That you should always listen to authority and follow their rules, even if you think it's going to get people killed? Or does it only apply to women in authority? I'd say this is unnecessarily authoritarian, and not a very great way of portraying women in leadership. And now, for the final issue I'll bring up this video, Reylo. I have nothing against people who like pairing Rey and Kylo Ren together, but it isn't exactly the most positive message ever. Kylo has killed a bunch of people, including his dad and kind of nearly his mum. He's kidnapped Rey, tried to manipulate her mind without her consent, and then tried to kill her. He's then gone on to try to manipulate her to the dark side, kidnap her again, nearly killing her in the process. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this isn't the healthiest relationship ever. It's actually very abusive and clearly not inspired by principled feminism. I hope you get my point now, that while there are problems with Disney Star Wars, the problem isn't them being too feminist, woke, liberal or left-wing. The problem is actually a lack of these things. And if you're against sexism and racism, this shouldn't be a difficult thing to agree with. The problem isn't having more women and people of colour focused on in films, or promoting equality. The problem is it being done superficially and badly, and this harms everyone. So if you have this criticism of recent Star Wars, I suggest a better argument isn't go woke, go broke, or too much feminism. It's to demand a more principled attitude towards equality. That Lucasfilm treated feminism superficially, and that's wrong, and anti-equality. Saying the Force is female isn't equality, it's sexist and divisive. A gender-neutral Force is the most feminist, when feminism should be in favour of gender equality for men and women, no preference. Now people who are more liberal or left-wing, for a lack of a better way of phrasing it, should be able to take this on board. That some entertainment, which has good intentions, can end up backfiring if the good intentions are only realised superficially. There needs to be a deeper and more complex basis than just having a female protagonist and including a black person. That equality isn't just the good stuff, like being powerful and a good hero. Equality is also the harsher elements, like having flaws, quirks, personality issues, struggles and hardship. And sometimes, even the positive elements, like having good and meaningful plot and character arcs, are left out, for some unknown reason. It's also worth considering that unnecessarily messing with an established franchise, even with good intentions, can do more harm than good. You can't just have good intentions, you have to be able to express them in a practical way that also does good and doesn't make a mess of things. So there's my point made, that critics are correct that there was a practical problem with Star Wars, but misidentified the issue. Instead of blaming liberals or the left, they should support a more principled feminism or wokeness in media. And while defenders of it are correct in the principles for having more feminism and diversity, in practice it hasn't gone so well, ending up as a superficial shadow of what could have been. As long as we're against discrimination and in favour of greater equality, maybe we're all on the same side, needlessly creating division. Being anti-liberal or anti-left isn't the solution, just as supporting shallow expressions of your values isn't the solution. Maybe the common problem is this: superficial corporate virtual signalling products, resulting in franchises which are neither well written or expressing principled equality. If you like my badly written, unprincipled video, please like and subscribe. Also, tell me in the comments your opinion. Is there a better way of doing things in practice? And should we actually be working together?